sharing with you some important information regarding some of the most interesting sites that we shall be seeing around. The harbour cruise will take approximately 1 hour. First visiting this harbour, which is known as Marsam Chateau, and later on the main harbour known as the Grand Harbour of Valletta, during which time Malta saw the construction of various structures known as the Neolithic temples, considered to be the oldest freestanding structures in the world, dating from about 3600 before Christ. After the prehistoric period, we continued with the Phoenicians, Carthaginians, Romans and Byzantines. Later on, the desert area to sterilize itself. Sagra Fermeria today houses the National Conference Center to the Virgin Islands. Just above the mansions, always on the right, is a monument with a big clock that was inaugurated in 1992 when Malta was celebrating the 50th anniversary of the donation of the George Cross, a medal that King George VI never received in the commemorations of that particular event. So while we are still enjoying the passions of Valletta on the right hand side, on the left hand side, the entrance of the harbour, the left of the fortress, the castle. One on either side of the peninsula, was possible that Valletta could become an island. Right hand side, you can see the front of the catamaran, Jean de la Valette, the name. It is the largest, it's the most recent and the largest catamaran part of the fleet that do the crossing between Malta and Sicily daily. Right hand side, you can see
Hello, nice to meet you all. And I will be taking you around this old city, the city of Mdina. Well, it is important for me to put the old fortress in a context before I start pointing out things and telling you about the buildings here, it's important for me to put Mdina in a time context. Well, the origins of Mdina date back to the Roman period. And the Roman period on the Maltese islands dates 216 before Christ, taking us right up to about 500 after Christ. This is a period of time when Malta was ruled by Rome. I would also like to add that 2,000 years ago, the entire Mediterranean was under Roman rule. This explains why in those days it was called Mare Nostrum, meaning our sea, because all the countries around the Mediterranean belonged to Rome. And this was a first and a last in history. No other civilization managed to take over all countries around the Mediterranean. Well, it was during this period of time that the island of Malta was known as Melite. And Melite is coming from the Greek word meli, meaning honey, the honey island. Perhaps because of the honey color of the stone, although some historians have proposed that the name may have originated from the fact that the peasants living on the island were famous for the production of honey. Maltese honey is still very well known today. Well, on this hilltop, roughly in the center of the island, at a height of around 200 meters above sea level, the Romans built a city, a walled city. A city that they called the city of Melite. But the city of Melite was not just the Mdina, where we are at the moment. It was both Mdina and the suburb of Mdina together. So once upon a time, the old Roman city that was originally built here was at least 3 times bigger than what we're about to see. 870 years after Christ, the Arabs conquered the Maltese islands. And according to the Arab conquerors, the old Roman city was too vast. They could not protect it completely because it was too big. So the Arab conquerors decided to reduce the size of the town, make it smaller, make it easier to defend. And the birth of the Mdina was actually a direct consequence of this project. The name is purely Arabic. Mdina means the city. The suburb, the part outside the walls, was given the name of Rabat. And Rabat is also an Arabic word, and Rabat means suburb. So we are in this square in the center of the Mdina, in the center of the city. At the end of the 11th century, precisely in 1090, Count Roger the Norman took over the Maltese islands. So from Sicily, the Normans came and took possession of the Maltese islands. And a new phase starts in Maltese history, the Norman phase. This is an important phase in the Maltese story, precisely because with the coming of the Normans, Malta was integrated into the Kingdom of Sicily. So throughout the Middle Ages, Malta was ruled by Sicily. In other words, the King of Sicily was King of Malta, the Bishop of Sicily was at the same time the Bishop of Malta. And it was during this period of time that Mdina started to be known as Città Notabile, meaning the noble city. Why was it called the noble city? It was called the noble city precisely because the fortress was the only fortress on the island in those days, and it was the privileged place where the feudal lords of the islands resided. So if you were not a feudal lord, you would be living in a village quite susceptible to attack, but if you were a feudal lord, you were a noble person, you could afford to have a house in the fortress, which was the safest place to live in the Middle Ages. 1530 is an important date. In 1530, Charles V, Emperor Charles V, gave Malta to the Knights of St. John. And it was with the coming of the Knights that Mdina stopped being the seat of the administration of the island, and the harbour, where Valletta is, became the new administrative seat. Why? Because the Knights were mariners. They had a fleet of ships. They couldn't live in Mdina, because Mdina is too far from the harbour. The ships were their most important investment, and so they were obliged to be close to their ships. And therefore, in 1530, the administration of the island stopped being Mdina, and the harbour became the new administrative centre. And right up to this very day, as you very well know, Valletta, our capital, which is the seat of the administration of the island, is in the harbour. So this was the capital of Malta up to 1530. Another important date that I have to mention before we start our walk is 1693. Why? Because in 1693, a massive earthquake shook the entire Mediterranean. And during this earthquake, Mdina collapsed. Mdina fell during the earthquake, it was destroyed. And it had to be rebuilt. So most of the houses around us are post-earthquake houses. Only a handful of buildings survived. Remember that the Catholic religion is the main religion on the island of Malta. Well, this is the mother of all other Roman Catholic churches. It's dedicated to St. Peter and St. Paul. Peter and Paul are the columns of the Roman Catholic Church, and this building is actually the third building to be built on this site. In the Roman period, the house of the Roman governors used to stand right here. Then in the 13th century, instead of the house of the Roman governor, they built a church. This church went on to become Malta's first cathedral. During the 1693 earthquake that I mentioned a few minutes ago, the old cathedral fell, and this was built in its place immediately after. Another square in Mdina, another picturesque square in Mdina. It's called the Council Square. We have a few historic buildings around the square. This building, the one behind us, behind me, was the law court of Mdina. This was the tribunal of Mdina. And today the tribunal, which is an 18th century building, houses the local council house. The local council house of Mdina is housed in the old law courts of the city. That terrace there used to be the town crier's podium. In other words, in the past, when they wanted to read regulations to the crowd or inform them of something important, a town crier used to emerge from the door there, unscroll his notes and start to read the regulations to the crowd gathered here below.